Podcasting from Portland East to Portland West, from Big Pine Key to Pacific Beach, and from San Juan to Guam, this is All Across America. Colin, thank you for being on All Across America, and thank you for having me here at Ernie's Pizzeria, and thank you for the crew. And, well, it's 2025, and we're celebrating 100 years of New Haven pizza.
Yeah, more than that, actually. We're celebrating 100 years of Frank Pepe Pizza, but guess what?
Okay.
It goes earlier than that.
Let's hear it.
And I'm so happy to be able to get into the roots, the depths to discover all this as a historian, as a pizza historian. So Pepe's 100th anniversary is happening. It's going to be in June.
Okay.
It started with an Italian immigrant. He went on his own in 1925, and it was a backyard bakery. He used to deliver pizza to the streets, to the factories, to the produce markets. And that was kind of what we know because their business is still here.
Yeah.
It's the unknown. There's more unknowns than the knowns. So it's like we kind of, in the certain restaurant world stories where restaurants are still here, their stories get to sort of rise
They get to
top.
write history.
They are, because they're the ones left. I mean,
Yeah.
the Louis Lunch of hamburgers here in New Haven, huge history. They're in the Library of Congress as the birthplace of the hamburger sandwich.
Okay.
Longest running history. If you grew up in this area, if you grew up in Connecticut, you all heard of it. If you watch Diners, Driver, what is it? Driver? I can't even say it. Dives, and Guy Fieri show. That one. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know.
If you watch Travel Channel, any one of these ones, Louis Lunch shows up in it.
Yeah.
And it's pretty cool. But the thing is when you start doing the research, you start to find out, oh my God, there were all these others all around the country doing hamburger sandwiches well before Louis, and it sort of rewrites the history that we knew.
Yeah.
In a real way, because you can document it. And being a historian is about being willing and able to accept the truth. And the truth is, sometimes we only know what we're taught. So I love that Frank Pepe's turning 100. It's a validated story. It's true. Some of these origin stories, like Lombardi's in New York City, I'm sorry to say, everybody, it's not true. It's not 1905. He was not the first slice in America. There were many more before him, and it wasn't even 1905 that he owned the business. So there's all these things that we're being told because it's good marketing.
Yeah.
But in the end, a few of us are trying to get to the nitty-gritty, bottom of the crust, the undercarriage
No pun
of pizza
intended.
history. Yeah.
Pun intended.
Truth.
So let's hear the pizza history before 1925.
Well, there's a number of them. I mean, one of the ones that I discovered was through the grandson. It was this guy Ignazio Camposano, and I used to work in housing and like development, and I was like in the building department in New Haven, and the guy who would help with the permits, Eddie Camposano, used to say, "Colin, you're a historian." He's like, "You got to know about my grandfather. He sold Pepe his first oven." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I don't know. I was like, "You're just saying family stuff. I don't know if any of this is true." Yeah. Then I started getting into pizza history, and I started to ask him questions. Hey, can I talk to you about the this story? And in the end, he had all these photos and records, and I delved into the records, and he 100% predated Pepe. I mean, he was a baker going back into the teens, baking bread and pizza, and then we have we have the evidence, we have lots of a colorful image of another immigrant family. Which then you have to beg the question: well, was he the only one? No, of course not.
Right, there was somebody.
There
probably
was always
before him.
more. So there were ones simultaneously happening, but none of them lasted. When did Camposano's close? In the late '60s, early '70s.
Okay.
Giuseppe Sarno predated Pepe.
Yeah.
He closed in the '60s. There were other families. So a lot of it has to do with who is left.
Right.
So some of the ones that came up more recently that are really hard to prove. There was Francesco Scalzo. We have very minimal records. It's even hard to find anything about him, just family lore, a couple records about a bakery. Great lore, though. And then there's another guy who was, great name, though, Caciocavallo. Domenico Cacciopoli. And so his name changes every other time, as you can tell. The name changed in every directory and everything. It's like Cacciopoli, Cacciopoli.
Right.
It's not Caciocavallo cheese, though. So Cacciopoli, he was a confectioner one year. He was a laborer the next year. But the family story is he's the first pizza maker in New Haven. So hard to prove.
Right.
Other ones. There was a great story from another guy, Ben, who has he's like my great grandfather. We were always told he made the first pizza in New Haven. His name was great name Luigi Pannone. Pannone is like panne is bread.
Yeah.
So
it's called an aptronym, right?
Yeah. So he was definitely a baker. We knew
Okay.
that. I knew his name, but I didn't know he made pizza. There was no record. It's hard to find the records. And I did find a cool thing, a lease from 1899 where he leased out the basement bakery in a tenement building.
Okay.
The basement bakery. Imagine how those still you still can kind of find evidence of those. And then had a store up front, and those are often really good examples, and you see that in New York City of like a bakery and a store attached. Oftentimes they might sell pizza. And finally, like the one that was the big one, actually it's very recent that I found this information. I knew about this one baker, but I did not know he was the one connected to making pizza here in New Haven way earlier. So, and I'm still doing research. So the earliest record of pizza in Connecticut in any written form so far is in Bristol, Connecticut, sort of central northern Connecticut. This smaller city, very much known for Stanley hardware, Stanley Works, tool works, and there was a lot of industry there. There was a lot of Italians who came up there. So there's a record in an Italian newspaper of pizza being made. It's all in Italian, and it's like focaccia, but not focaccia, more like pizza with, it said capumarola, which was the Neapolitan for pizza with tomato sauce on top of it. And so it proved that there was like a pizza being made for this one guy who went out into the country and had some pizza in the country. And it listed an address, not a name. Everything's spelled wrong. Like they're said, instead of Terryville, Connecticut, they go Terraville. Because they just, in Italian, they just kind of translate what they heard.
Right, phonetically.
Yeah. Meadow Street becomes Madone Street. Okay. And so I had to translate some of that. And then through mapping, like Sanborn records, going to the land records, you start to figure out city directories. You can learn where people were, who it was. The break for me, I got this name, Natale Acunto. I knew there was a Natale Acunto in New Haven, and I was like, oh, was there one in Bristol too? Like that's that was a 2-hour trip back then.
Right.
So I went to the city records. I went to land records. I found a lease from 1908, and the lease was from the property owner to Natale Acunto of New Haven, a bakery, and it lists the bakery and the use of the space, a wagon, a horse, a stable. And it's like, oh my God, there it is. That's proving that the guy who was in New Haven was, for whatever reason, having a business up in Bristol. And he's the one, it was his business at the time that the article came out. So then you have to work your way backwards, because doing these kind of things, it's not stuck in time. Like, did one person make pizza once? No way. Right. They made pizza beforehand. Probably. And so we start to assume you have to have examples of assumption, like, is there a reason why he might make pizza before? And yes, there is. He was in New Haven, the largest Italian-American community per capita anywhere in America.
Wow.
Yep, starting in the 1910 census proves it. That we had the most, and it was in Greater New Haven is still the most Italian-American area of America, period. Connecticut has the most Italian-Americans per capita. And people think New Jersey. They think
New York. Where
sometimes
I'm from,
New York, but
I had no idea.
It's just not. I mean, there's just so many other groups, and I think it's an interesting point for us to all learn about each other's cultures too. But so I looked into this, and of course I have records of Natale Acunto, who came from the Sorrentian Peninsula, so in an area called Agerola actually, and it's above Sorrento, it's above Positano, it's like way up high.
Yeah.
And it's very agricultural up there. And we know that area had a lot of early pizza makers that came to New York and made cheese. They were specialized in buffalo mozzarella and other types of mozzarella. They also had tomato growing in that area. Mm-hmm. And early in that area of the Amalfi Coast, you also had bread baking, because they had mills to grind the wheat with running water, a water wheel back into the 1600s. So they had mills then, and they were making pasta there too. Very early pasta making was in Minore. So a lot of those immigrants came to this area.
So, I mean, you had the ground zero of the holy trinity of the bread, of the sauce, of the cheese, and these folks immigrated.
And a lot of these guys came here. So, like, whether they really came here for factory jobs, railroad, quarrying, whatever they could do. They made 10 times more than Italy. But they also had the recipes that their mom or dad or aunt had. And some people came specifically with those talents to do it. When Natale Acunto came over, he came over early, about 1889. And the first record we have of him actually having a business was in 1891. And he's a baker. And it's on a street called Hill Street, which was thickly Italian, immigrant neighborhood, brick buildings going up, wood buildings. It was dense. It was kind of like being in part of Brooklyn or Manhattan.
Yeah.
And so what we find out is that he had a backyard bakery and there was a saloon in front. And that's a combination that you see a lot in Naples, in New York City, in Boston, where early pizza makers were, where they would have that combination of a bakery connected with a saloon. Because what were these guys doing? Guys after the factory, or guys just hanging out, would go hang out, play cards, have a few beers, have some more stuff, get in fights, which you read about because that's the only thing that makes the newspaper.
That's true.
Was all the fights, you know, it's the guns. I mean, there's a lot of violence even back then. It's kind of scary, but that's the stuff you hear about. And you also had poverty, so people were desperate. They were in a new land. They were trying to figure their way through. So you also kind of want some comforts, and you want cheap food. And, you know, you're not eating a lot of meat back then.
Right.
And pasta is usually made at home where you have like a kettle and you're cooking in a pot. And, you know, what's an easy meal? If you come from the land of pizza, abits, as we call it, then you're going to have the ability to have the pizza formed for you and eaten fresh, hot. So in New York, we see that. The saloons, like where Lombardi's was said to be founded, which it's true, was founded there, 53.5 Spring Street in Manhattan. It was once a pizzeria, but even well before that, into the late 1800s, it was other people's pizzerias. But they had an oven in the back of the restaurant space, which the flue went out the back of the building, so it wouldn't, you know, go through the building. It goes out the backyard kind of, and then you have a kind of a grocery store and a saloon. And actually, Pete, what happened is people would bring booze over from the saloon next to it and sit there with their wine and play cards and talk. And so it was a little bit of everything. And if you look at what is actually a 1908 photo, not a 1905 photo of Lombardi's, because it's falsely written, it says G. Lombardi, he's the owner, and it's got all these things. He's selling bananas, he's got olive oil, he's got everything else he's selling. But it does say Pizzeria Napoletana, which is obviously, and they're wearing aprons. They got flour on their shoes. There's another man in the photo. His name is Totonno Pero, who was baking with Lombardi, right. But Pero went on to open Totonno's in Coney Island, Brooklyn, in 1924. So they're over 100 years old, but unfortunately they're for sale.
Okay.
So looking into all this, like we learn from models of other cities of like the details, how did it work there? Could it have worked here? Or were there differences? You know, People often talk about like the slice culture in New York. Well, guess what? Back in the day, they didn't have slices. They would slice the pizza, but they didn't sell it by the slice. They sold it by the pie. Mm. Where do they do that? Well, go to John's on Bleecker Street. Go to Totonno's. They still sell by the pie. I guess Patsy's in Harlem is credited with the first slice in New York because they're on the go. They're fast. It's like a different pace. New Haven, don't even try it. Like there's a couple. There's spots.
No,
that sell, you can get slices,
right?
But they're mostly New York style pizza places. You know, they're cooking it more like a New York place. New Haven style is by the pie. It's meant to be shared. It was a family meal. It was a factory meal with a bunch of guys sitting around hungry after 2 shifts of factory work. That's the tradition, and it was strong here. A lot of these Italians came from the area where pizza is from. It's not like it was uniquely here. It's just it happened to be very popular, very dense area, and that's partly why New Haven is the pizza capital of the United States. Is this story? It's centered around one city that could contain this history. We're talking about 100-year anniversary of Pepe.
Yeah.
You've got 70 years. We're celebrating next week of Grand Beats, which started in New Haven. 70 years. Right. They came out of Modern. Modern is 1934. Last year, Zoo Parties in West Haven had their 90th anniversary. Wow. You know who else is 90 this year? Roseland Beats in Derby. So you've got these families that continue making pizza. We're here at Ernie's. He goes back to 1971. Learned from another family called Mike's Beats. Mike's is still in West Haven. I mean, this is the culture, and it's staying because the families are still kind of talking. If they sold it to another family or another group, it's because it's successful, and it's because it's good. It's just that good. It's sustainable. It's delicious. It's simple. Every generation keeps saying this is the food we want.
Yeah,
and it's not just us. It's New Yorkers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's also the Instagram generation. It's the most Instagrammable food, right? Pizza?
Seems to be. When I was getting into Instagram, because I started my food tour business in 2011.
Okay.
Before Instagram was really a thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Facebook was a thing, and I was using Facebook for my business. And I was like, I got it. Like, I've always been a photographer, but I was like, realizing when Instagram came around, I was like, oh, it's photograph based. So I got into it, and I was just using it to help propel my business. I noticed immediately on my pizza tours, which I had started, that pizza was getting more likes than, say, a taco or a random bowl of food that could look good.
Yeah.
But pizza, no matter what, always got more interest. And anything pizza. Like, you mention the word pizza, you will see a person's face light up. Like, they'll just be like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to go wrong. Does anybody not like pizza? I mean,
I want to find them, and I want to do experiments on them.
Yeah, right.
I want to take them to a Yale lab, and I'm going to find out what's wrong with them, what mutation they have,
Right.
and make them this way.
Yeah,
and then we're going to immerse them into a pizza therapy.
Really? I mean, because that's the thing about pizza is, like, there are so many different styles. I mean, you can have it with cheese, without cheese, with anchovies, with so there's something for everybody.
Thick,
like
thin,
right,
right, spongy, soupy.
Yeah. Maybe not soupy, but
well, that's welcome to Chicago.
Well, let's not talk about that.
We can.
No thanks.
I don't have any limits.
So what makes New Haven pizza New Haven? I mean, I always think of the three ends. You've got New York, you've got Napoli, and you've got New Haven. What makes? Because that's my question. Because you have all these people coming from basically the same region in southern Italy, Campania, coming to New York, coming to New Haven, but it's different here. And how come that happened?
Well, I actually think it's very similar to New Haven style, as we're going to call it. Yeah. Is very similar to, like, the original New York style. And what we now are learning is the original, perhaps, Boston style. Boston doesn't get enough attention. I just gave a little help with the Boston.com article, because there's two historic pizzerias left, maybe three, but two doing what we might call historic Boston style, Santarpio's and Regina. And they're very, you start looking at the crust for them. They're thin. There's, crispy a little bit, but the chewy crust. You go to John's on Bleecker Street. It's one of the oldest in New York. It's been through a couple owners down its history, and goes back to actually has a lineage back to the 20s. And then you've got Totonno's, which has lineage back to Lombardi's, and then Lombardi's, which is a very complicated story. But if you look at the two, Totonno's and John's on Bleecker Street, their crust structure is very similar to New Haven. They're cooked in coal-fired ovens. Right. They're cooked, in a pie. They're chewy and kind of crispy crust. They may not char it, cook it as long as, say, New Haveners like it. Yeah. But you can get it that way, and it's more familiar. So what it leads to, and this is something that I discussed with Peter Regas out of Chicago, who's like the pizza history whisperer. He's an amazing discoverer of lots of secrets in the pizza world, and it's his hobby. So he's been collecting stories, interviewing people from around the country, getting to the roots of what is America's, pizza history, which is so cool. And following suit is Scott Wiener in New York, who were on Scott's Pizza Tours, and he's always been digging into New York City pizza history to help tell his stories. And then there's me, and I've been started with New Haven and Connecticut, but now I've branched out into the entire world as well. We compare notes all the time. Then you go to the science side. Nathan Myhrvold, who's Modernist Cuisine, he wrote a voluminous book called Modernist Bread and Modernist Pizza. They're $450. They're 3 volumes. They come in a box. Pretty amazing research. He flew around the world. He tested out things. He creates recipes. I mean, it's super intense, and he's opinionated. I don't agree with all of his opinions. No one should. His opinions are about New Haven pizza shouldn't even be in the book. Honestly, it's great to have a book that's science based, but don't put your opinions in it. Put that in the other book.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Because it starts to dilute what I found powerful, and I found powerful besides the recipes and all the research. The other research was how he helped to figure out what was pizza like in Italy over 100 years ago, and why is it what it is today? Because how would you describe Neapolitan pizza? If you could describe it.
I would say thin crust. I mean, it's all about the buffalo mozzarella.
What about the crust itself? What do you describe that crust like?
I mean, thinner than the New York style, thinner than the American crust, but not charred like the New Haven style.
So one of the definitions I always find for Neapolitan is it's definitely thin in the middle, but like they have what they call a cornicione. The edge, the crust comes up, it puffs up,
Right.
and it's soft and gooey, and they love it when it's gooey. And they eat it with a fork and knife. I mean, everything is running around inside the pie. So that has evolved. So the proof that we're finding out is the pizza that was made in Naples and all around that area was not what it is today. It evolved because that's what countries do. They evolve. Language evolves, culture evolves, food evolves.
Yeah.
It's very clear that there's foods that are evolving. Pizza is not an old food. It's a newer food. Tomatoes came from Peru.
Right. It was a gift by the Emperor of Peru.
Yeah,
the
like a
King
viceroy of Peru gave it to the King of Two Sicilies, and they was all Spanish run at the time. So, it was like this gift, and it was like this little plum tomatoes that they were like, oh, it's poison. But the peasants grew it, and they started making these perfect, tomatoes in Italy because of the soil, making sauces, red sauce, and it goes on pizza. And that all happened in the 1700s. So, I mean, the pizza we know today...
Fairly recent history in terms of humanity.
Yeah. And then, water buffalo came from China. So they brought these things in to make a different kind of milk. They had cow milk mozzarella, but again, like even that, there wasn't heavy-laden cheese on pizza. It was mostly like seafood. They put lard on it. They had some veggies. They had, there were different things that were going on it. Not heavy in cheese at the time. But looking at the construct of the dough itself, we see commonalities in New York, Boston, even like in Trenton, New Jersey, and New Haven, Connecticut, and then looking at even historic pizzerias in Connecticut also, we see a commonality. Thin, crispy crust, kind of chewy. That's a commonality, and it's telling us, and then we look at evidence in Italy, and there's descriptions in the 1800s of Neapolitan pizza being crispy, called chewy, thin. You even see photos. We've got there are photos. There's also drawings of pizza going back into the early 1800s and mid 1800s of a pizzaiolo selling the pizza on the street with a knife cut into triangles, selling all different kinds of pizza. I collect these. They're amazing.
Yeah.
And they're perfect evidence of what the pizza looked like and how it was being sold. Yes, it was being sold by the slice on Naples streets because there were lots of people around. Yeah. And it was something you could pick up and hold. And this whole the Italian wallet, where you fold the pizza and
the
fold
Italian
it again.
wallet. I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah. Pizza portfolio, and so that where they cake it and they hold it in like a kind of napkin, and they have it kind of folded into quarters, and you just start biting into it. I mean, that's a bendable pizza. That's something that came, in my understanding, came later.
Yeah.
So again, like if we go back, we're missing a piece of history where some people remember when it changed. We don't have that. All we have is Italians yelling at us saying, "No way, you're wrong, Americans. No, you cannot say abits. You cannot have your pizza is bastard."
Right.
Or you have people in America saying, we don't know because this is the pizza we knew. This is what my grandma taught me. We don't know where it came from. We didn't do anything to the recipe. Why would you? We're a time capsule. I mean, that's the whole thing.
That's true.
He would never mess up his recipe. His dad taught him his recipe.
Yeah.
And Pat's recipe goes back to his dad, who was taught by his cousin, who his cousin was probably taught by someone else in the family. You don't change those recipes.
Yeah.
It's a time capsule.
Sometimes they're better preserved here than they are in the old country.
But they
Some
are.
traditions.
That's it.
Yeah.
But the thing is the old country has changed.
Yeah.
And that's why there's so much defensiveness in Italy about why we are totally different. Like, you are lost, you Americans. But what we are is we're holding on to the vestige, recipe, the vestige memory of the ancestors that came over, and we're keeping that going. And that's if you look at like evolution in like Darwinism and stuff, you can do the same thing with food. It's how it works. If you separate people, they continue in one line or they continue in another line. Right. And Italy is willing to evolve. We are not willing to evolve those Italian recipes. Pizza has to stay the same if it's in your family. Otherwise, what are you doing? You're changing it. You're ruining it.
Yeah, it's almost more nostalgia, family history behind it. Whereas I guess back in the old country, it's just kind of everyday thing, and there's less of rules saying you can't change it.
I mean, there are some things that obviously stay the same, but there's way more cultural influx happening in Italy.
Yeah.
And acceptance into that. Like when there's a new trend, it's going to go well. But there's actually a specific thing we found. World War II. Can I swear?
Yeah.
It fucked it up. It fucked Italy up. It really did. I mean, Mussolini fucked Italy up, but like World War II, they couldn't grow crops. They weren't able to produce commercial crops, so all their grain ceased. They couldn't make pizza. They had to bring in grain for bread from Canada, from Manitoba, and that was a different kind of flour. They were planting that, and they had a different kind of flour being planted, which was a more refined flour. It was they were actually able to refine it, and the flour that came over was what we now call 00 style. In that very refined flour, they created a different pizza.
Wow.
So even though we have proof of a pizza, I have photos of a pizza seller, a venditore di pizza, on the Naples shore. We don't know where he's from, but he definitely was selling it on a table. I have a few photos of this guy from postcards, and the pizza kind of looks a little bit like what you might call Neapolitan today.
Yeah.
We don't know. I mean, did it have a puffy crust? Yeah, it was a little puffy, but we don't know what the construct of the pizza was quite like. Maybe it was evolving over time. It was heading in the direction of being a lighter, fluffier thing that it is today. Maybe it was meant to be that way, and World War II really pushed it right over into that realm.
Yeah.
But if you look at the old photos of pizza at Pepe's has like original photos from about 1929. It shows a crispy, charred pizza.
Yeah.
Just like we still make it. Sally, same thing.
Yeah.
Old photos that we have, even the oldest photos of pizza, even in New York City, these look like what you might call old school New York style pizza places. Pizza that we would have today, and that's like, that's good proof. 1,000 words in those photos, 1,000 bytes.
We are better at preserving traditions here in the United States than back in the old country, whether it be Italy, China, Russia. I just remember growing up in Mount Kisco in Westchester County. We had a large Italian-American population, and women, especially the older women, would wear all black after their husbands passed away for the rest of their lives. That was tradition. So there were a lot of older ladies that would wear all black. When I lived in Italy, you would never see that. Never. The only time I ever saw it was in interior Sardinia, which is an island in the Mediterranean off the coast of Italy.
Wow. Yeah.
And an interior kind of backwoods area of that island was the only time I'd ever seen in Italy women wearing black. And so here you had a tradition that was preserved when these people emigrated to the United States, probably pre-World War II, that was being preserved in the United States, but that wasn't happening on the Italian mainland.
Yep.
And it's the same thing with pizza.
Pizza, dress, language, certain behaviors maybe do stay the same, but the language thing brings up the whole abits thing.
Abits, yes.
So like everyone used to say that. Okay, so that's the whole thing. Is like if we get through the understanding, like, well, how could they possibly say it? It's pizza. There's no abits. I mean, oh man. Oh, the internet. So, like social media, like the amount of dumb comments that come through that people just attacking because they don't think it's a real word. They don't want to believe it. I just explained it to you in a 5-second video. You can't believe it now. I mean, well, who are you? Like, who? Just because your family didn't use it, just because you never heard of it, I'm gonna tell you, like, you're wrong, because it's history and it's just being open to history. And so, like, different languages in Italy, Italian comes from Florence. And Neapolitan, Campano, comes from the area of Campania and sort of the Kingdom of Two Sicilies, for better or worse.
Right. Italy was only unified about 150 years
1861,
ago.
right. Yeah. Garibaldi came in and they said, okay, the northern is going to rule the south. That's kind of what happened. So they were pushed down, and you would not want to be a peasant. It created a kind of friction where if you spoke Napolitan, you wouldn't want to be really seen speaking it unless you were with your family or with someone you're maybe doing business with locally. But if someone is on the street, you would say, no, of course, we're being taught Italian in school. Yeah. We should speak the proper Italian now. This is what the country is telling us to do. Yeah. And I actually learned some of this still was being taught when Pat's father, Ernie, was growing up in Amalfi. They had the Napolitan. They spoke their own dialect in Amalfi that's separate from even around the corner in Atrani. Every town had their own dialect, and sometimes they couldn't understand each other. Wow. I still learn that. I learned that even when going back this last year. They still use the dialect, still. But when Ernie was growing up, I mean, he remembers his parents saying, never, don't say these words. Like in Italian, they say, always use the proper Italian. We don't want to be seen as a peasant. You want to be seen as educated because people will treat you differently.
Yeah.
And it's really that is what happened in Italy, and I'm talking generations. So if this happened in 1861, I mean that's almost 10 generations ago.
Yeah.
So I mean, so much gets lost in translation after time, and that message is something I learned as a historian. And so looking at what happened when they came over here, they had their spoken language. Many of these people were illiterate. Couldn't read, couldn't write.
Right. Yeah.
They did not even speak Italian. They spoke Napolitan.
Yeah.
And so learning English and having Napolitan that's all they had. And especially in an insular community like New Haven, where they all lived amongst each other. They were all from the same region, generally, like either Benevento or the Amalfi Coast or certain other cities and towns, because there's lots of different villages where they came from, Caiazzo and others. But the commonality was to speak their language. Whereas in New York City, biggest Italian community in America, millions,
They came from all over.
a couple million Italians, northern, southern, Sicilian, you name it, all over the regions.
I haven't thought of it that way.
They mixed up,
Makes a lot of sense.
and they found English, of course, and then how are they going to communicate with each other? But it happened a lot of places. And then we have proof of where Abitz was. It was in Brooklyn. We have evidence.
Okay.
Oh, it was in all the bordering parts of New York next to Connecticut. It was in the Berkshires. It was in California, Florida, Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. We have evidence of it. So we know it was in advertisements. We know it was used by families who've grown up, and it got lost. That's it.
Yeah.
We're just here to teach the rest of the country how to really, really say Abitz. I mean, come on.
I often wonder why there isn't like a hip hop group from New Haven called Beats.
There is.
There is. Get out of here.
No, there's not. I don't think there is.
Maybe a techno band. Beats.
I think they got played out.
So talk about maybe we had a couple sides of pizza before we began talking. One was a pecorino romano and the other was mozzarella. Can we talk about the difference in? I mean, you don't really see the pecorino romano pizza anywhere but New Haven, at least in my experience.
Well, we call the plain pizza here is a tomato pie. So it's just sauce, which is just crushed tomatoes, with pecorino romano cheese on it, which is what most people will go, oh, is that Parmesan? It's not Parmesan. And most pizzerias, it's pecorino romano, even in New York. So if you have that little thing on the side, it's got like, a little cheese in it.
Yeah, a little cheese, yeah.
I can't hear that. But it's actually pecorino romano, because even in New York City, in other places, they will do a dusting of pecorino romano. Like, not every place, but it's pretty common that they'll put it on because it adds a little salt and it adds a little bite to the pizza. So the original pie was a baker's pie. As we understand, if we want to talk about Pepe, he didn't have refrigeration in his backyard bakery. There was no bathroom. He just had simple water, and to be able to make the bread product. And then he had obviously storage and no refrigeration. So when he was considering the pizza aspect, because he could make more money selling pizza, what did he have? He had things that were easy to transport: canned tomatoes, anchovies. Romano cheese comes in a wheel. You don't have to refrigerate it. It's preserved
mozzarella
on its own.
is very difficult to move around.
Yeah, and mozzarella is so here's another cool thing. New York City has all these tax photos from 1939 to 41. So you can go through every single lot in New York City was photographed then.
Oh.
It's great for research.
Yeah.
There's also photographs as you go around, and you can look at where these historic pizzeria sites were. I mean, in the 40s, there were hundreds of pizzerias in New York City. And they were all over the place, like places you would never think. So as I discover them and look at them and map them, a lot of times you'll see in the 1930s and 40s, because that's the big boom was in the 30s after the repeal of Prohibition. Thank God, you get the beer. But that was a big boom. Bakeries turning, you can open a restaurant, sell beer.
Right.
And so you see 2 doors down or next door to the pizzeria was a Latticina, a cheesemaker. And so they had the cheese store right near the pizzeria, and they'd actually specifically open a pizzeria near a cheese store because they wanted to have fresh cheese. And a lot of these guys, they may have had a small refrigerator, but not enough to do it all. I think so. I think it's great.
It's okay to run the mixer.
Pat wants to know if it's cool. He wants to actually do a
notes.
freestyle rap. Is that what you just said? My name is Pat. He's gonna start mixing.
I think it's a kitchen mixer.
I wish there was a camera. It says, "Is it okay?" It's so cute. I thought you were gonna be like, "Is it okay if my little nephew hangs out with you guys?"
It's a diesel mixer.
Oh, a diesel mixer.
That's cool. That's exciting. I'll get really loud.
Maybe give us 10 minutes. What do you think? It's fair enough? All right.
have to
This
shut
guy's got
down.
the diesel mixer. If it was an unleaded mixer, that'd be all right.
10 minutes is cool? 10 minutes. All right, cool.
All right.
We got to work with what we can pay. It's a heavy bill. It's gonna add $100 to this now. So, yeah, but, like, that was an interesting thing to look at. Whereas in New Haven, we had cheesemakers, and they were around, but it wasn't common to have, again, mozzarella on a pizza until the 30s, when we find that there were storefront pizzerias opening up, and they would have had a refrigerator back there, and they were making other things too. They were making stuffed breads, they were making grinders, as we call them, subs.
Grinders. We're in New England.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, they made like pasta dishes and stuff. So you would have a small refrigerator, and then you could put mozzarella in there. But the amount of mozzarella you might need it for, you're going to make 100 pizzas in a night, if you were going to make that. You know, you're going to need a good amount of cheese if people are eating mozzarella. So you can't just have a small, old school refrigerator. You'd need something bigger, or you'd need at least the cheese store next to you.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the pizza box.
Oh, those are fun.
So that was a New Haven invention.
Well, according to my research, the earliest record of a pizza box being made in America, and maybe even in Italy, but at least the record I have, is in New Haven. Yeah, and it goes back to the 30s. So they were just taking previously cardboard, putting the pizza on the cardboard, taking baker's paper and wrapping it with string, and then stacking those things. And that's the old way of delivering pizza out. And so because they would have big orders, maybe 20 pizzas, they would go to the factories, and they were, you know, it would be clumsy. So they enlisted 2 different companies. The first one I found out was a guy named Fortunato Coco. I interviewed the grandson. I watched a video of the father talking about how they used to had the boxes made and the story about it, because they were the ones who kind of had the original story. And the video was from the 70s of his father talking about his memories of his father doing this in the 30s.
Wow.
So they opened in 33 as a pizzeria. Before that, they were a baker and grocer and pastry maker. And he describes how the niece was working at a corset company. Big company. One of the biggest corset companies in the world was the Strauss-Adler company here in Connecticut, in New Haven. And they had a box department because the boxes would ship corsets to all around the world. They asked them, could you make 4 sizes? We have 4 different size pizzas. Could you make this, 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 and this? And so, yeah, so he said, okay. And they did it. They got like a big order, and he starts boxing the pizzas into this, and customers start coming back, and they go, your pizza's nasty. Like, it tastes like paper. So it was the wrong kind of.
Oh,
it was not it's not the clay paper that they use today. What they call it clay. It's coated.
Right.
It was an uncoated, like light box. So it sort of was a learning thing, but it was a great story because that was the memory that they had. And the Corset Company did make pizza boxes and correctly made pizza boxes from then on.
Yeah.
So did the National Box Company, which the Collins Box Company came out of in 1947, out of a garage in Derby, and they still specialize only in pizza boxes. So there's this whole like cool story because there was like dozens of pizzerias in New Haven and the demand for delivering. I think that's what did it. Doesn't mean it didn't happen somewhere else. We just haven't proved it. You know, we know in the 40s there was pizza box manufacturing in Brooklyn, New York. Scott Wiener wrote a book called Viva la Pizza, all about the art of the pizza box. And when he wrote the book, it's actually how we met. He was working on his book, and he came to Ernie's, and he like saw the box, which is cool. And he was and Pat said, you should talk to Colin. You're really into pizza. And this so randomly, me and Scott connected and became besties forever.
I
over
love
pizza.
I love the Ernie's pizza box. I mean, there are so many pizza boxes. They're ubiquitous. You've tried all the rest. Now try the best. And it's
old
like,
school.
And it's like, I've seen that in 100 different pizzerias. And it's like, come
I know. We're specializing in pizza only. That's what they've always said. And that pizza box is in Scott's book.
Nice.
This one here, yeah.
I mean, I kind of find it funny. We'll put a photo up on Instagram. Ernie's Pizzeria, specializing in pizza. It's kind of like, you think?
Well, they used to say specializing in pizza only, and to differentiate from a pizzeria, because a lot of them were they would say they were pizzeria, and they had a full menu. Pastas and dishes, chicken dishes, and lamb and everything. I mean, you go to Italy, a pizzeria has everything too. Unless you're in Naples and you're going to an old school place, these places they're like
Very true.
trattoria, ristorante. You know, they'll say pizzeria, but like it does mean a lot more. Here it was like, generally speaking, I mean, he's got stuffed breads back there. He'll make them specially sometimes, but they really are just focusing on pizza here.
I got you. That makes more
Says
sense.
a lot.
And getting back to the pizza itself, we didn't talk about the coal-fired oven.
Do you want to?
Let's do it.
Okay. It's a hot subject. So coal is the original method of burning. Actually, it was called coke. It was a byproduct of coal, and they made it in New Haven. They made it in 7 different manufacturing around the East Coast. They used to sell it to homes, sell it to businesses, and it was what powered these big ovens. Yeah. So if you had a baking establishment, you most likely had a coal-fired oven. Yeah. French bread oven, they called them. And they were like these kind of narrow vaults with coal on one side, a door in the middle, and you put your bread products in there, usually on a tray, and then take them out when they're ready. And, you know, you want a low heat for that. So coal burns really hot. Yeah. So you want that heat to kind of mellow down. Pizza cooks hotter than bread. I mean, for what you want. So if you're in Italy and you're making bread, the same thing might happen. You're building a wood fire, whatever kind of oven it is. If it's a domed or a barreled oven, it's going to be too hot for bread. So actually, a lot of theories around pizza being started as a tradition came around cooling the oven down before you made bread. So it was a way of making a snack, but also a way of using ingredients that maybe you had leftovers, cooling it down. So anyway, coal. It was available. It's instead of wood. We didn't have wood as much back, 120, 30, 40 years ago. We had coal, and that's what cooked our pizzas. And that's it did it in Boston. It did it in Trenton. It did it in New York, and you name it. So in all these historic pizza cities, I mean, that's what they used. Most were sold other products. I mean, the Coke went out of business in the 60s. You had to either get anthracite, which is now still burning. Yeah, it's all from one town in Pennsylvania, one purveyor. That's it.
So that's where they're getting it from here? They're bringing it from Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyone burning anthracite coal in a pizzeria in America is getting from this one company in Manahoy City, Pennsylvania. That's it.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. No one else is doing it. So, yeah, they do. So like Sally's and Pepe's are the only ones in New Haven are still burning coal.
Okay.
And Little Rendezvous is a historic one in Meriden, Connecticut. They still burn coal.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking a handful here.
Yeah.
There's new ones that are coming in that are doing coal, like Fuoco Abitz in Cheshire. He built an entire oven just for the purpose of
doing coal,
making coal-fired pizza. Wow. Big oven, kind of modeled it a little bit after the idea of like a French bread oven. So it is very purposeful. But like when Mike's Abitz, where Ernie's came from, they had a coal-fired oven, and it was in front of the window. You could watch them making pizza in this kind of like amusement area. Right. It was great. It was like another show. And eventually, when they moved out, they tore all Savin Rock down in the 60s. They moved to New Haven, and they got a steel deck oven like these. Blodgett's, that's a Bari right there out of New York. Yep. The Blodgett's are like a Vermont brand. There's Baker's Pride. And those ovens, the steel deck, were actually first marketed in the 40s by Frank Mastro out of New York. Mm-hmm. He had an oven company, and he even opened a pizzeria to prove that the gas ovens worked. And he was trying to make
Smart.
life easier for everybody. So with that, with all the popularity of pizza, in the 40s, during and after World War II, in songs, you name it, movies, that's the explosion of pizza. Is so much attention came on, and it was much easier for someone now to open a pizzeria. You did not need a coal-fired oven anymore. Yeah, you really didn't. You could do that and transport these things and buy them. Yeah. And it's just so much work. Coal is a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
It's
dirty.
A lot. Yeah, it's a lot. And the ovens are beasts, it's will and whim.
I mean, how long does it take to get those to the right temperature? I mean, if you're cooking a pie at, let's say, 11 in the morning, when do you have to fire that thing up?
The thing's always fired up, as I learned. They keep the ovens going, so there's always a fire. It probably gets as low as maybe 400 degrees.
Wow! So even overnight, they're just
they stoke them.
Simmer.
They'll stoke them late at night, and they'll stoke them in the morning and get them back. If they know the oven's going to be starting to work, they got to get it stoked by 7 in the morning. Wow! Back up to the fire is 1500 degrees. But what you want on your dial, if you've got a meter that's in the middle of your oven, you want that to be about 600 to 620. is usually where they want it.
Yeah.
Because that's the ideal for getting a New Haven style crisp.
Okay.
Here, these ovens are probably a little bit less.
Right.
Steel deck ovens, they often don't get that hot. They can't.
No.
Unless you
usually
unless you
500,
tweak
550 max. Yeah.
Right. So like they're cooking the pizza differently for that purpose. I mean, it's gonna be a drier product, maybe get crispier if you wanted to do something. You got to make adjustments, and that's actually the mastery of pizza. Again, it's what do you want it to be in the end, and what are you cooking with?
Yeah.
And then obviously structuring your dough that way. So, hydration levels, and these guys, they know how to do it by hand, by sight, by feeling the temperature outside, the dew point, the barometer, the time of day. How many pizzas are we making? Do we have any big orders? How's my oven doing? Yeah. All these things matter. Like
art and science.
It's really, some people will say it's just a science, and I still think it's both, because it really is. It's like the baker feels it. They have to, and they don't need instructions. I do that now. When I make pizza, I just don't even measure. I'm just like, this feels right. Yeah. How am I going to cook it? Am I going to cook it on my wood-fired uni, or am I going to cook it on my stone in my oven, my GE, oven? And I'll know like a little bit more water for this, or a little less for that, because I know what I want. I want it crispy. I want it chewy. I want it charred. And I don't want it to be. I want to cook the middle, so you don't want to overhydrate anything. I'm very specific about my toppings. Weird, I'm getting hungry again.
We just ate 2 pies, but so toppings. What are your favorite toppings? I mean, the white clam is also famous in New Haven.
It is. My favorite topping is probably anchovy.
Me too.
Yeah,
I'm an anchovy guy. I do surf and turf. Pepperoni and anchovy.
I could see that working.
It's not beloved by a lot of other people except for me, but
I could see that working. A little salt and spice.
Right.
I like hot cherry peppers with my anchovies too.
Ooh, I like that.
Something hot. But yeah, so Alige we call it, anchovies, and then garlic. It's great. White pie, you can do that just like the white clam. The clams here were first sold on the streets on the half shell. And then they put them at the bars while you're waiting for pizza. And then Frank Pepe kind of created this new thing where he had a white pie, and he didn't think sauce was going to go well with the clam. Shucked the clams, chopped them up, put garlic, oregano, pecorino romano, and olive oil. Kept it really simple, and it just produced this new thing that a lot of people like described as the best pizza in the world. Best flavor, best texture. There's a focaccia-ness to it, but it's thin.
Yes.
And that's something that I love exploring. White pizzas are like a whole other thing. You don't need sauce on it.
Yeah.
Good amount of olive oil. The broccoli rabe garlic here, I get it with no mousse, extra olive oil, extra pecorino romano. It's just heaven. And you can eat it cold. You can eat it hot. It's crisp. You noticed it's crisp here.
Yes, sure is.
So it's just heavenly. And I figure out what every pizzeria is going to do the best at, and I try to get that pizza every time. So I'm not a big topping person. I actually don't eat clams much. Yeah, I don't eat them actually at all. And so I'm more of like a simpleton. Sauce, garlic, mousse. I'll do like onion with broccoli sometimes. I like little simple stuff. Like I'll do a couple little things. I'm more of a veg topper. Tuna once in a while. Now look, tuna is going to scare people. Sorry,
scares
kids.
me a little bit.
Don't try this at home. Actually, do it at home, because you're going to have a better tuna than if you get it at a restaurant.
Probably.
A couple places do it. Hey, Pat, did you need to do this? The mixer?
Eventually, yes.
Okay, how much time?
5? All right.
5 o'clock? Okay. All right, 5 minutes. We got 5 minutes.
All right, 5 minutes.
Just want to make sure. I don't like. I get anxious. I feel like I have the time clock.
He's a real
on me.
smart ass over here sometimes.
Hey.
Nothing's changed.
No. I've actually gotten smarter and assier.
The second part. I'm smarter.
You know what? Leave that for my wife, okay? Gosh, they always bully me. Oh, you say that about everyone's wife. You're like the barbershop over here.
Around too long.
I guess it's true. Well, that's why we love you. All of Pat's secrets stay here, usually, especially the pizza recipe.
Yeah, that's going to the grave.
How much? Not if I can help it. So how much did they offer you to get like your sauce, like how you make your crushed tomatoes? What was it, like 500,000 or something? Somebody wanted. Yeah. But you do a class. You got a class on Monday. Not it's going to be after this one, but you do classes. I mean, if you want to learn how to make the really good pizza, go to
Pizzeria.
Pat's class. I mean, it's pretty awesome. We used to do classes together when he had a real class, and but it was fun. It was my first pizza classes, and we figured out a really cool rhythm, and it's neat. It was great to see how he does it, and then I moved on to doing classes with Zupardi's, and Pat still does the classes, and it's so cool because people want to learn, but you know,
it's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of people that do want to learn, but it's it's interesting that it's basic, but it's not.
Right.
They have to, they think, I could do that.
Just because something's simple doesn't mean it's easy.
Correct. And that's the essence of, the day-to-day stuff. So.
Yeah. Well, hey, if everything were simple, were easy, I'd be a professional surfer. So yeah.
That's easy. Just stand on the board,
Yeah. Simple, right?
I think it's easier to be eaten by a shark than to probably go surfing and master that. Probably. But no, I mean that's the thing is in this whole YouTube, Instagram world of everyone trying to, say I want to do something new and I can do it, and then needing to be seen doing it. I still say, look, that's great. You can make something look good. You can probably make it taste good. But the traditions, it's the families, it's the traditions. That's the stuff where it starts, and that's what the tried and true is. And that's what we have here in New Haven.
Yeah.
It's tradition.
Yep.
And I think it's a beautiful thing. And I think that's what separates New Haven and our culture here in Connecticut generally from other states, other areas.
Yeah.
Things move fast.
Yep.
I mean, places get gentrified quickly.
Yeah.
Families move out. Things close. Next thing you know, there's no community left. There's no tradition left. And we really love our tradition here as much as we sort of complain. We're really good at complaining in Connecticut. Very good complainers. I'm going to get A+ for complaining. But that's the thing is that yet, people will always say, as much as I hate, Connecticut, they'll say, but the pizza, the beats. I mean, they keep having one memory of Connecticut. It's probably the pizza. It's what we do best.
Yeah. Well, how can people find out more about you and more about Taste of New Haven?
Well, I'm in Maxim magazine, Playboy Hustler, Playgirl. Sorry, no. So I'm on tasteofnewhaven.com. Taste of New Haven handle is Instagram and Facebook, and we run food tours. I lecture. We got movies and stuff. So I got Pizza Love Story. Slice of America is out streaming right now. Nice. It's about a New Haven style pizza place in Stuart, Florida. So we're telling stories of other pizza places around and making movies about it, shows. And we got a play coming up in June.
Wow.
It's a pizza play about a fictitious family that's based on New Haven. I'm in it. I do talk forward, help people understand it. It's a full theater group called Broken Umbrella Theater. We've got a pizza history exhibit in October that's coming up at the New Haven Museum. So a full whole section of the museum is all about New Haven's pizza history.
Nice.
And we're also going to have a giant pizza party. We're going to have the Guinness World Records largest pizza party in the world. The record will be beat this year in September in New Haven.
Nice.
At the Beats Feast, the A1 Toyota
Beats
Feast. It's
okay.
my annual event. It's our 11th year doing it.
Beautiful.
We are applying for this. It costs a lot of money. We need help. Help me.
How do you need help?
Well, we need money. It costs money to apply, but we also need you there. So if you can't pay, if you don't want to sponsor or be part of this, that's fine. We want you there. We just tell everybody about it. It's a free event. It's in September 12th. It's downtown New Haven, and it's a bike race called the New Haven Grand Prix.
Nice.
So it's cycling races, crits, and then this giant food festival with about 40 vendors. It's so much fun, and we are going to have the Guinness World Records, the best record setters, keepers anywhere come out and prove that our 20,000 people that we usually get out is bigger than the one in Tulsa, Oklahoma with 3,600 people. I think we can beat it.
We can do it. I bet.
I just need you, people of the world. Come on down.
Come on out. September 12th, 2025 to New Haven.
Let's go.
All right. Well, Colin, it's been great having you on the show.
Thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate it.
A lot of fun.
I'm so excited.
And full bellies, but I can eat more. So
you're a great host.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody who's on this is very fortunate to be on the other.
Appreciate the kind words.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to sharing and loving.
All right. Well, thank you.
Okay.
We did it. It's a wrap. Let's get a photo before we get up here.
Pat, the mixer can start.
Mixer can start.
It's is it okay to run my mixer? Yes.